Do you believe in destination? Or in delicious traps, which we set up to ourselves without even realizing it? I used to think I had control of everything, from my life, my desires, my choices, until my nephew called me to spend a weekend in the mountains. And when I say nephew, don't think of that little boy I saw growing up. Think of a man with a smile that promised much more than rest and fresh air. The invitation was simple, almost innocent. "Aunt, let's go to my friends." "Hut? Do you need to relax? Get out of town?" The proposal was naive, but my imagination is not naive at all. I knew I shouldn't go. Any aunt with a shred of judgment on her head would say no. But I looked into his eyes. I saw that glow from who knows exactly what he is doing. And the word yes escaped my mouth before my conscience could do anything about it. It was like jumping from a closed cliff, hoping the fall was the best part. And do you want to know? I was about to find out. But before, tell me, where are you listening to this story from? Comment down here the name of your city or state. It's always good to know how far these stories are coming. Maybe the next story is not similar to something that happened there. The way to the cabin was the first fire test. 2 hours locked in that car, climbing the mountain. Silence was not embarrassing, it was electric. I felt the weight of his gaze on me when I pretended to look at the landscape through the window. He drove with a confidence that made me restless, his firm hands on the steering wheel, the arm muscles flexing with every curve. It was impossible not to notice the man he had become. The boy who was running around my house on vacation had completely disappeared. We talked about amenities at the beginning, his work, my projects, the family, but each word seemed to have a double meaning, a hidden layer that only we both perceived. He praised my perfume, saying that it matched the mountain air, something wild and fresh at the same time. I felt my face warm. A simple compliment, but coming from him, in that context, seemed a deliberate provocation. He put an ambient song, something slow and sensual that filled the space between us. I caught myself watching his profile against the sunlight. He was beautiful, in an almost aggressive way, and he knew that. The way he moistened his lips before asking if I was comfortable was not innocent. He was testing the boundaries, measuring my reaction to every small gesture. I said, yes, it was comfortable, but the truth is that I was everything but comfortable. I was anxious, electrified. The trip was being delicious torture, a prelude that let me imagine what would happen when we were finally alone, away from any known look. That car became a bubble of tension, and I already knew it was in trouble. When we arrived, it was night. The cabin was exactly what I needed and exactly what I feared. Rustic, made of dark wood, isolated at the top of a hill, overlooking a deep valley. There were no neighbors. There were no lights around, just the sound of the wind in the trees. It was the perfect setting for a romance movie or a passion crime. That weekend, perhaps it would be a little of both. Inside, it was surprisingly cozy. A large fireplace dominated the living room, a too-inviting leather sofa, and a small kitchen where everything was within reach. The air smelled the pine and the burnt wood. He lit the lights, and the atmosphere gained a golden, intimate tone. He looked at me like a secret treasure. "Did you like it?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The main problem, which he mentioned, with rehearsed casuality, was the rooms. There was only one main bedroom with double bed and a sofa bed in the living room. He said he would be on the couch, of course. I insisted I didn't need to, that the cabin was his, or rather his friend. We waged a small battle of kindness that was, deep down, it was a power game. Who would give in first? I ended up with the bed, but the arrangement of the cabin made it clear that the privacy would be minimal. The walls were thin, the space was shared. That place was made for couples, for intimacy. Being there with him, feeling that loaded atmosphere, was like being on the verge of a cliff. The cabin would be our refuge from the world, but it would also be the place where we could not escape each other. The first night was quiet, or rather, contained. We made a quick dinner, took a glass of wine, and I retired to the room early, claiming tiredness of the trip. It was a lie. I was electric. I lay on that cold double bed, listening to his movements in the living room, imagining him straightening on the couch. Sleep was slow to come. my mind working 1,000 an hour, passing on every look exchanged in the car. On Saturday morning, time began to change dramatically. The blue sky gave way to heavy clouds, lead, which accumulated over the mountains with a frightening speed. The wind began to upload outside, shaking the cabin's windows. He looked out the window and commented that the forecast indicated rain, but not that. That was a real storm forming. We decided to enjoy it while we could and did a little walk, but the rain caught us halfway. We rushed back, soaked and laughing. That moment of relaxation almost made me forget the danger. Seeing him there with his shirt glued to his body through the rain, his messy hair, aroused something primitive in me. I had to look away, focusing on preparing a coffee to warm us. But the storm gave no respite. On the contrary, he intensified violently at the afternoon. Rays began to cut the sky, illuminating the room with scary flashes, followed by thunder that made the wooden structure shake. What was supposed to be a cozy weekend was quickly becoming a scenario of forced isolation, and then, with a stronger crash. The light blinked and turned out completely. The pitch was instant and total. For a moment, we only heard the rain fury against the roof and our own breath. "Stay calm, Aunt. I'll light the fireplace and take some candles," he said, his voice sounding strangely close to the darkness. I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Lack of electricity meant more than just running out of light. He lit the fireplace first. The fire began to crackle, throwing dancing shadows on the walls and illuminating his face from the bottom up. It was a mesmerizing view. He looked older, more intense in the light of fire. We took the phone to check the situation. No signal. Zero. We tried the landline of the cabin. Was silent. The storm had toppled the lines of communication and the energy. We were officially isolated. No one could reach us, and we could not reach anyone. The outside world, with its rules, their judgments, and their social conventions, simply ceased to exist. It was only the cabin, the fire, the storm, and both of us. The feeling was claustrophobic and liberating at the same time. I looked at him and realized he felt the same. The reality of our situation has fallen upon us. There were no distractions, no internet, no television, no escape. We would have to face each other's company in a crude and direct way. The air in the room seemed to get denser, heavier. That forced isolation was the lack of catalyst for the tension that was already in the air since we got into the car. The night would be long. With the fireplace on and some scattered candles, the cabin has become even more intimate. The world boiled down to that small circle of hot light. We decided to open another bottle of wine. It was the only thing to do, right? We sat on the floor, in front of the fire, the couch looking too formal for that moment. The wine descended fast, warming the body and releasing the tongue. The conversations changed their tone. Darkness has this power. It encourages us to say things that daylight inhibits. He started talking about the pressure he felt, about family, expectations, about feeling alone even surrounded by people. These were confessions that I never expected to hear from him. He was opening, showing a vulnerability I didn't know. And then it was my turn. I talked about my failed marriage, about the loneliness I felt, about the fear of letting life pass. I talked about how I felt invisible sometimes. As I spoke, he heard me with an intensity that disconcerted me. He didn't look away. It was as if he was drinking my words, absorbing my soul. "You are not invisible, Aunt. You are the most fascinating woman I know," he said, the low and hoarse voice. The compliment hit me like a punch in the stomach. It was not a nephew compliment to Aunt. It was a man's gaze to a woman. The wine, the fire, the isolation, everything was conspiring against my common sense. The line that separated us was starting to blur in the candlelight. After the confessions, silence settled again. But now it was different. We no longer needed words to fill the space. Communication was done otherwise. Sitting there, side by side, the heat of the fire and the effect of the wine made us soft, relaxed, but with keen senses. I was hyper-conscious of his presence, the rhythm of his breathing, the smell of his skin. We started a dangerous game, a game of looks. I got him looking at me when he thought I wasn't seeing, and he caught me doing the same. When our eyes met, We did not immediately deviate as we would do in a normal situation. We sustained the look for seconds that seemed eternal, testing who would break first. It was a battle of wills, a measurement of desire. In one of these moments, his gaze came down from my eyes to my mouth. It was a deliberate, slow gesture. I felt my heart accelerate. I knew what he was thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Sexual tension in the room was so thick that it could almost be played. It was palpable, suffocating, and absolutely delicious. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt for years. He smiled in the corner, a smile that said, "I know what you want." And the worst part, or the best, is that he was right. I wanted to break all the rules. I wanted to know what was the taste of his mouth. We were playing with fire, literally and figuratively. And at that moment, I didn't want to put out the fire. I wanted to see everything burn. The wine bottle has come to an end. He got up to fetch more wood from the fireplace, which was starting to diminish. I reached out to get my empty cup to the floor, and that's when it happened. Upon returning, he stumbled slightly on the carpet and had to lean on me not to fall. His hand landed on my firm, hot shoulder. The touch lasted more than necessary to recover the balance. It was an electrical contact. His skin burned through the thin fabric of my shirt. I held my breath. I looked up, and our faces were inches away. I could feel his breath, smelling of wine and desire. The accident had been the perfect excuse, a badly rehearsed choreography to break the physical barrier. He didn't take his hand immediately. Instead, your fingers lightly tightened my shoulder, a pressure that sent shockwaves through my body. His gaze was intense, questioning. He was asking speechless if he could continue, and I, paralyzed by the intensity of the moment, did not go back. My silence was the answer he needed. Finally, he walked away, but the damage was done. The physical contact had made everything real. It was no longer just imagination, looks, or words of double meaning. It was skin on the skin. From that touch, there was no way to pretend we were just aunt and nephew trying to warm us during a storm. The barrier had been broken, and the night was just beginning. We sat again, but the dynamics had completely changed. The space between us seemed smaller, the most volatile energy. He put more wood on the fire. The flames rose again, but the heat I felt came from another source. He sat closer this time, our knees almost touching. "This is crazy, isn't it?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. It was my conscience trying to take control one last time. A weak attempt to bring reason to an environment where reason had been gone for a long time. I needed him to agree, or that he gave me a way out, a moral anchor. He turned to me, the face, illuminated by fire, the dark eyes of desire. "It's wrong, isn't it?" He repeated my question, but not as a confirmation, but as a challenge. There was a glow of excitement in his eyes with the forbidden of the situation. For him, being wrong seemed to make everything even more irresistible. "Yes, it's very wrong," I answered, but my voice came out weak, without conviction. He smiled, that devastating smile. "But do you want to stop?" he asked, his voice hoarse. He knew the answer. I looked at him, to that man I should not wish, in that isolated place in the world, and the truth was inescapable. No, I didn't want to stop. The border between right and wrong meant nothing in that cabin. The silence that followed that question was my surrender. I said nothing. I just sustained his gaze. The storm outside seemed distant now. The only sound that mattered was that of firewood and that of my own accelerated pulse. He understood. He understood that I was as lost as he in that situation. Slowly, as if he was approaching a scared animal, he raised his hand and moved it toward me. Time seemed to stop. I followed the mesmerized movement. This time it was not an accident. It was intentional. He put his hand on my waist, lightly at first, just feeling the ground. I stood. The touch was soft, but firm. His hand was large, hot. He did nothing more for a few seconds, just left his hand there, marking territory, waiting for my reaction. I should have walked away, given a sermon, remembered he from who I was, but I didn't do any of that. Instead, I relaxed under his touch, my body cheating on any remnants of morality that was left to me. Seeing that I didn't go back, he exerted a slight pressure, pulling me a few inches close to him. His hand slid a little up, his fingers brushing the side of my breast. It was the drop of water. That deliberate gesture, possessive and loaded with intention, destroyed the last barrier. There was no return. The game was over and the action was about to start. With his hand firmly on my waist, he leaned over. I knew what was coming, and my whole body longed for it. Our faces were so close that we shared the same air. I closed my eyes in anticipation. Time dilated. Each millisecond before contact seemed an eternity of expectation. When his lips touched mine, it was like an electric shock. The first touch was soft, an experimentation, a final test. But it quickly turned into something urgent, hungry. It was not a shy kiss from those who ask for permission. It was a kiss from those who knew exactly what I wanted and was ready to take. He tastes like wine and sin. I corresponded with the same intensity. My hands, which were inert so far, came to life. One went to his neck, pulling him closer. The other grabbed his shirt at chest height. The kiss deepened, desperate. It was an explosion of repressed desire, for months, perhaps years, of tension that finally found an escape valve. I forgot who we were. I forgot the world out there. I forgot it was wrong. At that moment, we were only one man and a woman consumed by desire in the middle of a storm. The first kiss was the point without return. The door to sanity closed and was locked on the outside. We were in free fall, and the feeling was terrifying and absolutely addictive. The kiss took us from the ground to the couch in a quick and uncoordinated movement. We fell on the leather spent, it over me. The weight of his body over mine was exactly what I needed. His hands were everywhere, in my hair, on my back, down my thighs. They were strong, urgent hands that mapped my body with surprising familiarity. The storm outside was nothing compared to the chaos that happened in that room. We completely lost control. The clothes became obstacles that were in a hurry, with despair. Each touch was a spark. Every panting breathing was fuel. The light of the fireplace danced on our skin, creating an almost unreal scenario of unbridled passion. There was no more hesitation, no guilt, just the visceral need to have each other. He knew exactly how to touch me, where to touch me. It was a mixture of tenderness and savagery that led me to madness. I surrendered completely to the sensation, the forbidden pleasure that was 1,000 times more intense because it was wrong. Each moral barrier I had built was demolished in a matter of minutes. On that sofa, in front of the fireplace, we crossed every possible boundaries. There was no rationality, just instinct. The intensity of what happened between us was overwhelming. We were taken by a current of desire from which we did not want to escape. At that moment, the cabin was not our prison. It was our particular universe, where the only laws were those of our own desire. I woke up with a weak morning light entering the window. The first thing I noticed was the silence. The storm had passed. The only sound was the end of the extinguished craying final, and his calm breath beside me. We were in the bedroom, in the double bed. I didn't remember exactly how we came to stop here after the couch, but it didn't matter. He still slept, his heavy arm over my waist, his serene face. For a moment, I just watched him. The morning light did not have the same magic as the light of fire. She brought reality, the reality of who he was, who I was, and what we had done. The weight of his arm was no longer just comforting. It was also the weight of our transgression. I tried to move slowly so as not to wake him up, but he woke up as soon as I moved. He opened his eyes, blinked a few times to get used to the clarity, and then focused on me. There was no smile, no good morning, just a deep, intense look that carried all the complexity of the night before. The silence in the cabin was deafening. The chaos of passion had disappeared, replaced by a tense calm. The air was no longer loaded with desire, but of unqualified questions. What do we do now? What does that mean? The magic of the night dissipated with the first rays of sunshine, and now we had to deal with the consequences of our uncontrolled real world. We got up in a kind of quiet and strange choreography. We avoided direct eye contact. He went to the bathroom. I put on a robe I found. I went to the kitchen to prepare a coffee, the morning routine looking absurd at what had happened. The electricity had not yet returned, so I used the cabin gas stove. When he appeared in the kitchen, already dressed, the tension was palpable. I served the coffee and sat at the table. The silence persisted, heavy. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, a fragile attempt of normality. "Yes," lied. None of us wanted to be the first to approach the elephant in the room. We looked at our cups, to the window that showed a calm day after the storm, anywhere, except for each other. The words, "What did we do?" They hovered in the air, not said, but shouted in our body language. Was there a blame? Yes. Repentance? That was the confused part. My body still vibrated with the memory of the night, but my mind was on whirlwind. Finally, he broke the silence. "About last night," he began, the hesitant voice for the first time since we arrived. I looked at him, waiting for the verdict, but he didn't finish the sentence. Just looked at me with a mixture of confusion, desire, and fear. I realized he was as lost as I was. There were no easy answers to what we had done. The morning advanced and the electricity came back, as did the cellular signal. The outside world has invaded our bubble. Messages began to arrive, normal life demanding our attention. It was time to leave. We arranged the cabin in efficient silence. The mood was strange, almost funeral, as if we were cleaning the scene of a crime. As he put his bags in the car, I took one last look in the living room, on the couch, the fireplace. The scenario of our sin. It seemed impossible that everything was exactly the same, when we were both so different. That place would keep our secret forever. When I got in the car, he was already in the driver's seat. Before starting, he turned to me. "Aunt," he began, and the use of the word aunt at that moment sounded strange, almost painful. "What happened here is here. No one needs to know. Never." It was not a request. It was a statement, the founding of a pact. I looked into his eyes. I saw the same resolution and the same need for mutual protection. We did not need to discuss the details, the family implications, the scandal. We both knew what was at stake. "Yes. Stay here," I confirmed. It was a silent pact sealed with a "your look." He turned on the car, and we started down the mountain, leaving the cabin and our night of madness behind. The return trip was the opposite of the trip. If the trip was loaded with expectation and electric tension, the return was marked by introspective and heavy silence. The song was off, each of us lost in their own thoughts. The mountain landscape, which once seemed inviting, now seemed just a neutral scenario witnessing our escape. I was looking out the window, but my mind was focused on what had happened. The sensations of the night before were still vivid on my skin. His smell, the touch, the intensity of the kiss. I knew that those memories would be recorded in me forever. Do not cross such a line and back unharmed. I was changed. From time to time, I looked at him from Sosleo. He was focused on the road, but his jaw was locked, the white fingers in the steering wheel. He was also fighting the consequences. We were complicit now, linked by an incendiary secret that could destroy our family if it came to light. Complicity was as strong as the desire of the night before. When we arrived in town, reality beat in full force. Traffic, people, normal life. He left me at home with a fast, almost formal bye. I got out of the car feeling a strange void. We left the cabin behind, but I knew what happened there would follow us for the rest of our lives. The memory of that night would be my sweet particular torture. I came back to my life, my routine, but nothing else was the same. I became the guardian of a secret that consumes me and excites me at the same time. The cabin in the mountains became a milestone in my story, where I allowed myself to lose control and discover a part of me that I didn't even know existed. We met again at a family lunch the following week. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Seeing him there, interacting with everyone, acting like the perfect nephew. But when our eyes crossed a second fraction, I saw. The spark was still there. The memory of the cabin was alive in his eyes too. What we did was wrong. For the morality of the world outside, yes, absolutely. But in that cabin, isolated by the storm, we created our own morality. And that's the truth that haunts me. If it happened again, I would do everything exactly the same. The storm has passed, But the door we opened that night, it will never close completely. Did this story move with you? I know it's controversial. I want to know your sincere opinion about the limits of desire. Comment down here, and don't forget to enjoy the video. And if you like stories that explore the darkest and most intense side of human relations, subscribe to the channel, because this may have been the first time, but who guarantees it will be the last?